Just first, give a lot of thanks to our staff, our coaches, Jason Tudrin and the recruiting staff, the recruiting department, Anthony Garro, from all the graphics to the GAs. Recruiting it takes everybody. And those guys probably don't get enough credit because they're not seen. But from the evals to finding the players to going out and developing relationships to keeping the relationships to getting them signed. And then I thank the players who signed and stood with us. I think it says a lot about them. It's kind of like how I felt about this year. I found out a lot about our team. I found out a lot about our players. And the 17 guys that signed, it says a lot about them. We're going to be able to count on them in hard times. And I have tremendous respect for them and their families. Smaller class in our first two. And I think that reflects in the rankings, obviously, because I think we were bringing in above 25 my first 2 years, but this is really our third class. So, I felt really good about the first and second. Obviously, at the end of the season, we were playing with 36 of the 44 in our two deep were from our first two classes, but smaller class this year, but by no means not talented. I think it may be the most talented group as a collective yet. We'll find out. It's kind of like in the NFL draft. Everybody thinks they have a good draft on draft day, and then you find out 2 years later. And then when they re-rank them, you find out how good they really were. But these are quality student athletes, great families. We got length, we got bigger, and we got fast. And again, smaller with only 17, but the right fit for us. And I chose that number to be smaller for a variety of reasons. One of them is, as a lot of you guys have seen, we've been pretty active with some transfers that, we feel really good about as people, fit, character, culture, and certainly good enough to help us win games. So we've been aggressive there and had success, and clearly there's more spots left. In this crazy world of college football where managing a roster is going to be very tricky, I think you have to keep spots available. Certainly with the portal still open, and then with the portal reopening after spring, you're potentially going to have to make room for more guys once again. So I am very grateful to our staff, and I'm very grateful for these 17 that signed. I feel really good about this group, combined with the first two and the vets we have on the team and the transfers we're going to bring in. And it's been a lot of hard work, but today's a really good day, and I'm excited about it and grateful for all the help. So I'll take as much time, you guys, and ask away. We can't talk about transfers legally because they haven't signed, nor can they. So I'll be happy to talk about any of the commits or anything else you guys want to talk about recruiting.
Coach, it looks like you threw a fence up around Massachusetts.
Massachusetts was important to us, and it needs to continue to be. We want to recruit regionally, and I think right now, Rich, in this culture and this changing in football, you better hit your backyard hard, because I think with guys really being able to leave every year if they want, when you get the local kid who really wants to be a part of this, and they grew up wanting to go to BC and they're good enough and good enough students, you got to take a strong look at them because they're probably not going anywhere. And I think that's really important. And just for example, we offered a kid really late, Max Tucker, from CM. And when you're at a place and you can go see that kid practice and you can go and watch him play in the championship game like I did, and everywhere you go, every coach keeps talking about a kid like that, to me it was a no-brainer at the end to offer him. He's going to play here, and he's tough, and he's smart, and he's reliable. But we did. We took, obviously, Day and Jane Skeet, and all from the same school. And I think that is important for us to do. I think we need to go out and get the best players we can in the country, and I think being at BC allows us to do that because it's a national brand. Just look at our campus. There's more kids here from California than from half the other places. But I'm really pleased at the way we recruited locally. I think Jaden Skeet, when all is said and done, I feel very similar to how I did about Joe Griffin. I think Joe Griffin was the best player in the state last year, and I think you're going to see, if we redo the rankings a year from now, he'll be number one. I think Jaden Skeet is going to be the same way. I think he's the best player in the state, and I think he has a ton of upside. And I think when we re-look at this, knowing that kid and his character and his size and length, and that's not a knock on any of the other kids coming from Mass, because I think they're really good. I think Jaden Skeet is a special player, and I'm really glad that he signed with us.
Did Owen McGowan help with this, or?
I'm sure Owen did. I mean, those guys all know Owen. And I think the connection that we have with Coach Dibbs over there, who's one of the best legendary coaches in high school football, he's been incredible. And, I think it's been all hands on deck at that school. And it's an example of make sure you do your homework in your backyard. And I think, again, Max is a prime example of that.
You mentioned how you're grateful that these 17 guys stuck with you after the season you guys had. Can you describe more about that, what it was like recruiting after that season, and how you think it unfolded from yours?
Yeah, I think at every point, a lot of these guys were probably hearing it from other schools. There's probably other colleges telling them, this team's got this amount of wins. You sure you want to go there? Or this team's doing this and that. But I credit our staff. It's about relationships. And a lot of these relationships have been for a year and a half plus. And part of going through something hard like that is you find out how convicted they are and how loyal they are and how much they really want to be here. And most of them didn't waver. So I think that says a lot about them. Maybe there were times when they did, and then they figured it out and they knew this was right for them. But I think if we're recruiting the right guy, that current season, I think it's bigger than that. Does he believe in what we're doing? Does he believe in the future of what we're doing? Does he want to get a life-changing degree? So I think those are all things that factored in, and most stuck. And I think that's important that we know, especially, nowadays kids can leave. These kids could leave next year at the end of the year if they want. And I'm pretty confident that these guys here, these 17, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that says a lot about them. And I'm glad we figured it out now than later.
Coach, I know you can't talk about specific guys, but you've been a lot more active in the portal than years past. I know you've said you didn't really want to go that route, but what's changed this offseason? Was it just because of last year?
I've never said I don't want to go that route. What I've said is I don't want to build our team in the portal. And this is our third class, and we've had 2 huge classes, and now we have a smaller class with 17. Like I said, 36 or 37 of the 44 in our 2 deep at the end of the year were first and second year players from those classes. So I feel good about the young players here. I feel good about us being able to develop them and have them grow, because that's how I think you're going to win at Boston College. And I didn't sign 10 kids, and I'm not going to go out and get 15 in the portal. But I've always said if we could find the right fit, from a football standpoint and a character standpoint, and it's going to keep our culture strong, then I would look into it. I know who we have now. I see with people being able to leave, it's very hard to manage a roster. So if you can go out and get a kid that you think can play right away or be in the 2 deep or at least compete for that, and you either have a relationship with him because we recruited him in the past, or we have a coach who coached him in the past, like we've had some of those players, then I'm going to be aggressive. And just so happens that I've been more aggressive, and I'm going to continue to be. I have a clear picture of our team right now, and I have a clear picture of how the roster's shaping up. And I think there's some spots where we need players a little bit, so maybe some older ones. It's not to say these freshmen can't come in and beat them out. I think we had 6 freshmen we started at one point this year. You beat NC State. We had a redshirt freshman thrown to a true freshman to win the game. But if we find the right fit, and we're going to look and evaluate very hard, I'm going to bring guys in to compete. But I still want to build it through high school players, which is very evident because that's the majority of our team is going to be guys we recruit and develop. And that's just kind of where we're at right now.
Just from an exposure standpoint, how much more important is it to have that time, since this is your 3rd class? I know that first class wasn't even yours, but to see these guys grow and as you've been looking at these guys for a year plus, how important is it to kind of get that background and be able to see, evaluate, recruit them over time?
With these 17?
Yeah, with these guys.
Yeah, if you look at our first class, we did it on Zoom. Our first class, we were never in their homes. We never met their families. Most of it was on Zoom, and most of them didn't have a senior season. The very first class was signed. I got here after January. Now, there's some good players in that class. I'm not taking anything away from that class. Our first real class was over COVID. Our second class was last year's class. This is our 3rd. Some of these guys we've been watching now since their sophomore year because we've had the extra time. And I think that's a prime example of a kid like, Detrell Jones, who's in our backyard, and Jane Skeet, who's in our backyard, and you go out and watch them. And you see them in our camps, and you get to really know them, and you know exactly who they are, and you know what they're going to be like when things get harder, when things are good, and you start to trust them and have those really good relationships. I think the more time you have with a player, same with Holden Simmons, another local guy who we saw play basketball, didn't even play football. And you get this 6'4" plus 240-pound athlete running around. I mean, we've known about this kid for a couple years now when no one else did. And we finally offered him, then all of a sudden a couple other Power 5 schools offered him. Local guy, right, that we knew. So I think it's really important that you spend time and get to know these kids, which honestly, it makes the transfer portal hard. Because now we have 2 or 3 weeks to get to know these kids. And if you have no relationship with them, do you really know what they're going to be like when they step foot on campus? But a lot of them we do have a relationship with, and we've recruited them. That's why when you recruit a kid, at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to come to your school, I'm not going to yell at him on the phone. I'm going to wish him good luck. Tell him hope for the best. If he ever needs anything, give me a call, because you just never know. But I hope that answers your question, Dan.
And then just separate as the Catholic school route, I know that obviously football is football, but the Catholic school route has always been a big pipeline to BC. Being able to capitalize on that still.
Yeah, I think we can do that nationally, whether it's to go out to California or to Texas or to, Maryland, the DMV area. I think for some kids, I think that's important. And I think that kind of separates us because there aren't many. So I do think that helps us.
3 names that jumped out to me: Khalil, Jacoby, and Reed. Can you describe what those 3 bring to the team?
Khalil, big athlete, very versatile. Had a lot of success on offense this year. Has also played DB, runs track fast. Another guy, just to use as an example, I feel like we've been recruiting him for 2.5 years, so you really get to know who he is. You see him run track, you see him practice, and then you watch him play for 2 years. And that was a hard one because it kind of went back and forth. But now I feel he's even more convicted about being here, so I'm glad we went through that together. Who was the other one? You said Jacoby from Texas. Dad's his high school coach, plays a high level of football. Big, very athletic. Can run, hard to tackle. When you see him, you'll understand how big this kid's going to be, and has a really strong arm. So excited to see what he can do. Gives us a really good athlete back there. And the third one you mentioned? Reed, another. Montana. So he visited early. And when he walks in the room, you guys obviously haven't seen him yet. You want to talk about size. I think 6'4", 214, long, big, fast. I think the common theme is there's a lot of big, long athletes. He'll probably start off at wide receiver. He's played quarterback in the past. He's played safety. Could turn into a tight end down the road because he's young and he's already got size and athletic ability. I think 3 have a chance to be really good players. I think with a lot of these guys, if you look, there's a lot of 6 foot plus 200-pound athletes that if you look at and watch them play, they're playing on offense and defense, whether they're catching the ball, running the ball, playing DB, playing linebacker. It's like Sean Battle. I think Sean Battle is one of the best athletes in the entire Northeast. I think he scored 5 touchdowns in his second to last game. The guy's playing quarterback, running back, wide out, DB. He can play corner. We'll start off at DB for us. I'm really excited about these guys. And again, we'll see what they look like when they get here. I'm not going to pronounce anybody that's coming in and that guy's right now, but I like these guys a lot, and I like what they're made of, more importantly. Just like another local guy, Josiah Griffin. We've known Josiah a long time, obviously, because of Joe. And this isn't going to be Joe Griffin's brother. Josiah's his own person, completely his own person. And we didn't recruit him because of Joe. We recruited him because he's a big, long athlete who plays defensive line. And Coach Vinny and Coach Tem and I thought he could develop into a really good one. Have a relationship with the family. We've known him. We know what he's all about. And again, you have to go after your local guys like that.
Coach, nearly a third of the class is in the secondary. What was the emphasis on those positions?
Well, we need more depth back there. If you remember at the end of last year, we had injuries and we had some guys playing out of position, and it hurt us. We have to get deeper back there. I think right now, where we're going to be the deepest going forward is on the offense and defensive line, which is very important to me because I see you lose guys very fast there, and you got to really build that up. I think the secondary is the same way because if you really look at it, Rich, the way we play with 3 corners and 2 safeties, so that's 5 players. So that's almost half of your starting defense. So we need to build up the depth more there. I mean, but when you also look at these guys, I mean, you know, the DBs, Carter Davis, who's 6 foot 180, KP Price, 6 foot 185, Khalil Ali, we talked about, Sean Battle, we talked about, Max Tucker. These guys have also played offense, so they're pretty versatile guys. I think it's important if you can get really good football players that have size and speed and length, and all of a sudden maybe one grows into a linebacker, right?
Yeah.
Maybe all of a sudden one corner turns into a safety, maybe a corner turns into a wideout. I want to bring in really good football players, and these kids have all played a bunch of positions.
Coach, he's not a new recruit, but Christian Mahogany coming back. First of all, when did you know he was coming back? And second, the video, what did you think? And I'm sure.
What did you think of the video? Did it trick you?
Absolutely.
Didn't trick.
I think that's fine.
No. Christian and I talked pretty much throughout the season. Christian and I have a really good relationship. Since we got here, Christian and I became very close and been able to talk about anything. We've been very honest with each other. I kind of felt he was leaning to come back for a while. I think the NFL in his mind was always there a little, but I think he dreams of sitting in that green room like Zion did and coming off an ACL. And I think he realized that would be hard to do. So we talked. I had a pretty good idea, probably right before the last game. I knew he was coming back, even though I gave him a big hug on senior day. Had a great conversation. His mom's awesome, so she's been very involved with it. And then the video, he actually sent me before, so I didn't have a heart attack when I saw it. But I'm appreciative of Christian. I think it's an example like Zay. I think it's a very similar situation to Zay. I mean, let's all be honest with each other. You guys think anybody was calling Christian outside of our staff? I mean, I'm sure they were. I'm sure Christian received phone calls like Zay received phone calls. And the fact that Christian wants to finish his degree and finish playing here says a lot about him, his relationship with the staff, more importantly, his relationship with his teammates. I think now we have one of the best guards in all of college football coming back, and I think he's going to have a chance to be a really high draft pick and help us win a lot of games. You know, you put him now next to Drew, who's a freshman All-American, and some of the other guys we have coming back that played a lot. I think you're going to see a difference on the offensive line.
Any early enrollees?
Yeah, quite a few early enrollees. Josiah Griffin will be an early enrollee. Carter Davis will be an early enrollee. KP Price, Sean Battle, Holden Simmons, Jacoby. Those are the ones off the top of my head. And if I missed, I apologize to them. But I believe those are the ones. So we got a bunch of them. Truthfully, that's kind of the trend in college football right now. Guys trying to get in, get acclimated to school, get acclimated to the winter workouts, going through spring football, and then having a chance to compete in training camp. It's not for everybody, and I don't push it on anybody. I think you have to have the maturity and the confidence and be ready to leave home. Some kids are older. Some kids are already 19. Some kids are 18. Some aren't ready, and that's okay because I think it could backfire if they're not. But it does help if they are ready. So you can see we'll have a bunch of guys in the secondary who will be able to come in and compete in the spring.
Is that a personal decision, or are you able to discuss that with them if you think they would be a good fit to come in the spring, or tell them to finish up their high school year and then see them in the fall, or is that strictly on them?
It's on both. Certainly we can't have everybody come in, but it usually starts with them asking, and then basically the conversation I just had with you is the one I have with them, and I let them know very honestly what it's going to take, what it's going to look like, and I want to make sure they're ready because I don't want it to backfire and I don't want them to be homesick and start off with a bad feel. I think, being very honest, I think some positions you have a better chance to come in and play over others. Some physically, you're just not going to be physically ready to block a 23-year-old, or now with COVID, a 24, 25-year-old. Some guys are. Certain positions you can jump in and play right away as a freshman. some you can't. Some we need to get in to try to see if they can compete. Some where we have depth and they need to develop, we don't. So I think it's a two-way street. For some kids, it's better off go play basketball or go play baseball and go to your senior prom and enjoy your senior year. Some kids don't care about that. They just want to play football. So you try to figure it out and guide them, and ultimately it's their decision. And if we have room for them, we'll take them.
How much is left for this class? I know this is only the early signing period. There's still that other.
With high school players?
Yeah.
No, we took a small class. We're not done. We're not done. This ain't even close to done. And that's kind of by design. I want to see what's out there. I want to see what pops open. And then the other thing, what I've seen is being on the road for the last 14 days, people aren't going into high schools as much as they did because people are going to see their commits and then they're going to see transfers. So all these seniors who are late bloomers, there's still some out there that aren't getting recruited, which is kind of sad because there's going to be less scholarships for high school football players that don't get a chance. And sometimes some of those late bloomers turn into NFL players, right? And there's a whole trickle-down effect in this whole transfer portal thing. I mean, the other thing you're going to see is, there's thousands of players in there. There'll be over 1,000 that don't get out. And that's bigger than just football. Those kids aren't going to get degrees unless they can go afford it without a scholarship, which I don't know how many can. That's why I think, it's bigger than just football. About the student athlete, about a kid getting a bad advice when he might have a year left and has 1 year to get a BC degree, but he listens to someone else and goes into the portal. Because I'm never just going to throw a guy off our team. I don't care. If he plays scout team, he's still going to get a BC degree, which is going to change his life. But then a kid might go into the portal and end up without a scholarship, and he can't pay to go to BC on his own. 10, 15 years, that's going to impact his life more than football. And that's the problem right now. You got to be careful. And it's disappointing and it's upsetting. One of the reasons I came back to college was to help change lives and help kids get degrees and internships and set them and their families up. Because not many of these guys are going to the NFL. It's too hard. And then if they do, they don't last. So the portal's messing up a lot of things, including the development of seniors. So we're not done. We've got 17 kids committed. We have some transfers that are committed. We're going to have more.
How much has high school changed since the first time you walked into a high school to talk to a recruit, way back? Like, how much has it, how much just is walking into a high school to talk to a high school kid just changed through, 2 decades?
The biggest thing that's changed is you find out, what certain kids are all about. Some of the first questions now are about NIL. That was non-existent when I started coaching. Completely non-existent. Now you sit down and there's some kids who that's their number one question, and it's not going to work here. I don't mind if that's a question, but let's talk about academics, and let's talk about football, and let's talk about culture, and let's talk about things that can help change your life, development, fundamentals, and technique. If NIL is going to be your first question, then probably not going to work out. Some places it will, and I think that's great, but that's the biggest difference right now.
Did you make it to Hawaii or
no? For EA? EA actually lives in Vegas right now. So I made it to Vegas. And I did not go into a casino. I was not there long enough. I landed, was exhausted, went to bed, saw him early, and then I flew right out. That's not to say that maybe other coaches don't. I just didn't have time.
Coach, I know today's about the younger guys, but we haven't seen you since Phil left. Just some thoughts on him leaving and just kind of how that process ultimately went.
Yeah, Phil and I have a great relationship. Phil came in, 2 days ago. We sat in my office, talked a lot, gave me a big hug, thanked me for everything. And Phil and I talked a lot after the year. I think we all saw the future for us. And then Phil contemplated in the NFL. And I think the best thing for Phil was to go play another year. And he found the spot, obviously, with Frank. I called Frank, had conversations with him, said, hey, Phil's probably going to enter the portal. You got a spot for him? And I'll root for Phil. Obviously, other than 1 week when I'm constantly going to blitz him. And I 100% told him that. That's the relationship I have with Phil. Told him he's going to see more zero blitzes in that game than he's ever seen in his life, and he better keep his head on a swivel. But Phil did a lot for us. You know, Phil's the first guy that I went to the airport, picked him up, brought him here, played really well that first year. You know, we've been through a lot together. He's helped me, I've helped him, and I wish Phil nothing but the best. And he sees which direction we're going in too, and I think he's really happy for Emmett, and he was really cool about it. So a ton of respect for Phil, and I honestly, I hope he goes and crushes it for himself, for his career, and for his family.
And is that sort of I don't know if it's the right term, but a weight off of Emmett's shoulders, kind of knowing he's probably not heading into the offseason?
That's a better question for Emmett than it is for me. I think Emmett's a very confident player. Emmett showed a lot of toughness those last couple games. Emmett's teammates believe in him. I think he brings a lot of energy. I think he's going to have a really good offseason, being one of the best leaders. And Emmett's still got to go out and compete too. He knows that. But that's a better question when you guys see him when we come back. You guys good? All right, guys, have a great holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And then I'll see you when we get back.